Alright. Special features, just come along and have a chat with me, some tea, and maybe we might have a little fun. Special features, just talking about the movies and then something that might strike a chord with everyone. Strike a chord with everyone. Special features. Yeah.
Da 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 da. Meet the Greatshells. His boy Maximilian. I know that we already have a theme song, but I just figured it would be nice for our listeners to have a chance at another.
That's true.
You know, everybody deserves... You know what they say? You know that old saying? Everybody deserves two theme songs.
That's true. Everybody wants their own theme song.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2...
Greetings.
...of the Special Features Podcast. I'm here. My name is Maximilian Greatshell. This is my father, Walter Greatshell. We are your hosts for this fine and delightous cast of pod.
Exactly.
And I hope you're excited to embark on this new journey.
I'm excited.
On this new podcasting. I know that technically we don't have a break in between seasons because it's really just one long continuous season, but I decided to break it up because, you know, it makes it easier for me to organize the podcast, and gosh darn it if it isn't just fun. So, you know, all in all, I think it works out for the best for both of us.
I think so too.
All right. Well, here we are on this fine, almost spring day. The weather's getting a little warmer. That's nice, right?
That's great. Yeah, I've been enjoying it.
You know,
absolutely.
I don't have to. I'm a little. I mean, these are the good times, right? Like the spring, the fall, before it gets too hot, or, you know, right after it's been really cold. You know, and I also recently just got better from being sick again, which is nice.
That is nice.
You know, feel like I've been sick so much this winter. This has been a rough winter. I think a lot of people have been ill.
Yeah, I think so too.
Don't you think so? I mean, I work in public schools, so I see it every day. You know, people with the flu, people with whooping cough or whatever.
Beyond that, all the car accidents. You know, we've all had our car accidents.
Oh, that's right. We had a bunch of car accidents. Yeah. It's been a great year.
It's been fantastic.
It's been a fabulous year.
Yeah.
It's funny, actually. I feel like that mentioning sickness kind of leads into one of the things I wanted to talk about on the podcast today.
Okay.
Because I've obviously on this podcast I've mentioned that I'm a diabetic, you know, and I know that's not something. Yeah. I know it's not something you want to talk about, but it does tie in to something I do want to talk about, which is that I just saw finally Killers of the Flower Moon for the first time.
Nice, yes.
And that diabetes is a heavy theme in that movie.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of funny because I seem to recall in one of our previous podcasts you were actually posing the question: are there any movies where diabetes figures prominently in the plot? And at the time, I couldn't think of one. But
there you go.
Now we have one.
Yeah.
Yes, and Killers of the Flower Moon is truly...
And if you think about it, it figures into the plot of a lot of Native Americans' lives.
Yeah. And
in a very real, terrible way.
Yeah, which makes it kind of, you know, important in American history, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
in Killers of the Flower Moon, what is the what is the section of like the tribe of Native American people in that movie?
The Osage.
The Osage, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Because I remember, because when I think of that, I keep thinking of the book August Osage County.
Yeah, right.
And Osage County must be a county in
they're
the state that they're in. What?
Yeah.
I love how I come into the conversation about this movie. I have like no memory of any of the details about the setting for the movie.
Well, here's the thing, because
it's the South, right?
Yeah, I think it takes place in Oklahoma, but I'm not 100% sure. The reason that it's difficult to remember is because this is a story that I was absolutely unfamiliar with, which is one of the reasons that I think it's worth seeing that movie. That's why I enjoyed the movie, is because it was teaching me something I'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
Which is basically the oil wealth of the Osage Nation.
Yeah. No, I know it because we were unaware that there was like any tribe of Native Americans that had like, you know, amassed any kind of like oil wealth or anything like that in America. Exactly. I mean, it makes sense. I don't see why it wouldn't happen. Obviously, there's probably been all kinds of little like disputes over like money and land and things, you know, where most of the time I'm sure that they did not fall in the Native Americans' favor.
Right.
Obviously, Native Americans have been like really screwed over many times in this country since like, you know, white people came to it. But like, but it's just interesting. It's interesting to see that story being told.
Especially since I had only, when I connected oil, you know, the story of oil drilling with the story of Native Americans, my only frame of reference was the book Catch-22, which is a novel that I really like by Joseph Heller. And there's a Native American character in Catch-22 named, what is his name? Anyway, I can't recall.
Is it like something stereotypical, or?
I mean, not really.
I mean, is he like flying hawk or something?
No. I mean, it's much more low key than that.
I guess I shouldn't say stereotypical, because a lot of Native Americans like have names that are just like real things.
Yeah.
And but that's not abnormal. I mean, that's like most names that are, you know, especially names that are like derived from like an old language. A lot of times they're just names that are like, you know, in relation to things that are happening in the world.
Yeah, well, and in fact, I just remembered the name of the character. It's Chief White Half-Oat.
Chief White Half-Oat.
Half-Oat.
That almost does feel like it was intended to be comedic.
Yeah, it probably was. I mean, Catch-22 is a bit wacky.
Yeah.
You know, it's a World War II story, and Chief White Half-Oat is an Air Force guy, a military guy, and he tells his story at one point, and his story is that his family lived on this reservation, and oil was discovered under their house, basically. Yeah. And so their family was kicked off so that oil could be drilled. And then the place they moved, oil was again discovered under their house. Yeah. And this happened multiple times to the point where these oil speculators were following their family around.
Yeah.
And every time they tried to sit
they
down
would check
anywhere,
for oil. Yeah,
they'd kick them off and drill for oil. And so finally, at the end of the story, his family is surrounded by this army of oil speculators, just waiting to see where they're going to set down, and they're tired and they have to stop. And when they stop, all the oil speculators swarm in to attack them and essentially wipe them out. Except that Chief White Half-Oat, an army helicopter comes down and plucks him out just before his family is destroyed.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, that's how he ends up in the military. So the whole thing is absurd. But that whole oil speculation thing, in a weird way, is kind of reminiscent of this whole, you know, the Killers of the Flower Moon.
The Killers. Well, I mean, that's also why it's a surprise, like, because you would assume, I mean, that you know, the Native Americans were able to hold on to their wealth at all, because like you would assume that any time there was significant wealth in the United States, especially during times where there was like a lot of prospecting going on, that like, you know, wealthy white people, or like not wealthy, but like, you know, selfish white people would like swoop in and try to steal everything.
Sure.
And obviously that's what this movie is about.
Right,
it's about one particular like wealthy white man that wants to like, you know, take everything from the Osage.
Right. Now, but the thing that surprised me about it was that the Osage ever had the rights to the oil. You know, like the idea that they had it.
No, I know that like when they discovered oil, that they you know, they were going into court and like, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't that the point of the movie? Also, in some ways, I think a lot of people in this country have been taught through like, you know, colonial history, that like and not like, you know. What do they say? Like the victors are the ones who write history.
Yeah, the victors.
So like, you know, obviously our history is like drenched in blood, human history in general, and like I think a lot of public school history has basically been almost designed to kind of brainwash us into thinking that like Native Americans are like, or at least they were when we came here, like, I don't know, dumb or something. Like we've been taught to be, you know, that you read like quotes by like different, you know, colonizers and stuff talking about the Native Americans and having like such contempt for them, and talking about like, oh, they haven't seen a sword, they're so stupid, they cut themselves on a sword. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like we're brainwashed in a weird way to have this idea that like, you know, Native Americans, you know, they don't know the modern ways and they're not going to be able to figure their own shit out. But obviously throughout history we've proven that, you know, people who have been oppressed there are instances where those people like, know what they're doing and they get their shit together and they like, prevent people from fucking with them.
Right. Well, and then it's funny because I was reading something about how essentially the structure of the American government, when it was being written, when it was being decided upon, back by the founding fathers.
Yeah.
They got a lot of their ideas actually from Native Americans, from like the Algonquin Federation.
Oh yeah, I believe
and
it.
the way that they ran their affairs was adopted by the founding fathers for America. And
I remember that like it's silly to tie this into like a Dave Chappelle joke, but I remember Dave Chappelle joking about like slaves writing the Declaration of Independence, and it's like I wouldn't be that shocked. No. I mean, like after the amount of crap that we've learned that like like black people or even like enslaved black people or like, have done for this country over the years that has been like buried under the rug by like white history is like astonishing. I mean, even I feel like the best example of that for me is that Hidden Figures movie, you know, the idea that most of the reason we got to space was like these female black mathematicians. And I didn't know that most of my life.
Yeah.
And then finally like somebody's like, oh, hey, by the way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, for all I know, everything good that's ever been done, all the progress that's ever been made has only been made by the oppressed people, and all the people in top just always took credit for everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe nobody who's been in power has ever done anything to progress the world, and it's always just been the oppressed people.
Yeah. Well, I tend to, my personal belief is that most things that happen come from, people who are struggling. Because those are the people who want things to change.
They're the ones that are hungry.
Yeah, they want to fix things. Exactly.
No, I know. Which is why it's so hilarious to me, the idea of like rich people trying to like oppress everybody. Because all you do by oppressing everyone is make everyone hungry. And if you do that, then it just turns into a disaster for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It seems like you would be better off not oppressing people so that they don't want to like kill you or overthrow you to build a better society.
Right.
It's weird to me that the agenda has never made sense to me of people in power.
Yeah. No, I agree. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But
I'm just saying, like, when you read about like the history of like, if you want to go back to the thing about the Declaration of Independence, like our founding fathers, at first you're like, oh, that can't be true. Like, there's no way that like, the slaves did a bunch of stuff that made the world possible. But then like you start to hear stuff about the founding fathers, and you're like, it's like, Benjamin Franklin was a whoring alcoholic who tied keys to kite strings, and and Thomas Jefferson was a slave owning maniac who hated liberal progression and like, got a bunch of his slaves pregnant. And you start to think like, maybe it's not so hard to believe that these guys were just a bunch of bumbling dipshits, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not to shit on our sorry, not to
despair.
Come down on our founding fathers, but like,
Well, I think the point from all of this is that everybody has things to contribute.
Yeah.
And that people have contributions that come from all over, and oftentimes the credit has always been grabbed by the people with the power.
Yeah, grabbed by the white men predominantly.
Yeah.
No, I know. And
well, and in fact,
and I'm not saying that white men are necessarily like an all evil. I just feel like white men have been predominantly given most of the power in society for the past like 500 years at least.
Yeah, and generally, again, everyone is human, and white men are human also. And the point is that they, come from obviously a period of time when.
Well, let's not go defending white men too much.
Well, I'm not defending them. I'm just saying that for the past couple of hundred years, we've been in this thing called the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
And America is a product of the Enlightenment, and these things came out of centuries and thousands of years of oppressed horrors, and I feel like we've kind of risen above some of the darkest parts of history, and unfortunately, I don't know what the future holds, but
it's hard to say. I mean, because it's been very up and down, especially for the past like 100 years in America, politically speaking, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, like
not just America. The past 100 years in Europe.
Globally, yeah, that's fair.
Globally,
that's fair.
Yeah.
But like, well, I just mean like, okay, so we've talked about like how the downfall of our current political system is probably tied back to, like, Nixon, Reagan, like that era of presidents, but it probably extends even further back than we're aware of.
Oh, sure.
And for the last few years, it has been complicated. And for a while, it did feel like things were progressing in a really good direction. I remember after the Bush presidency, when Barack Obama became president, that Patton Oswalt had like a routine that he was doing. He's a stand-up comedian, if anybody doesn't know, and an actor. And he had a routine where he was joking about like talking to his past self as because and this was a routine he was doing during the Obama presidency, where he was like, things are actually going to get better. Like, we have a president. Can you guess what his name is? And it's like, what? He's like, Barack Obama. And it's like, no, like, Barack Hussein Obama.
Right.
Like it's because it seems so unbelievable.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
But then of course, now we have all this regressive nightmare stuff going on.
Yeah.
So, but I think a lot of that is backlash for the Obama presidency. I think a lot of people were very angry about that for no apparent reason.
Oh, I agree.
Other than racism.
No, sure. And I actually think that in a weird way, because I mentioned the Enlightenment, I think in a strange way we're actually right now going through a period of time where there's a backlash against everything about the Enlightenment.
Yeah, the Endarkenment.
Yeah, in a way it is. It's almost like we're returning to a medievalism.
Yeah, but feudalism. See, that's why I have hope, though, because I don't think this can last the way that periods of darkness have lasted in the past. I think this is like a very visceral reaction on the side of like the people who are at odds with history right now to people attempting to move in a better direction. I think this is their last, like, they see people like trying to get rid of the things that have defined their lives, because there's a lot of like if we're talking about the super rich right now, if you've been rich your whole life, all that defines your life is your money. So that's all you are. You're not a real person under that money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that is you. So the idea of somebody trying to take away like the system of capitalism, let's say, that's like, you feel threatened by that. You feel like that's people trying to kill you.
Right.
And get rid of everything because you don't believe there's anything outside of that.
Right.
So as a result, there's going to be, massive outrage over the idea of like trying to create like what we would consider a more like beneficial society for the people, or a utopian society.
Well, and the thing that gets me is that, whenever the automatic reaction is, because what's people's frame of reference? It's like, well, you've either got capitalism or you've got communism.
Yeah.
And so everybody's like thinking, not everybody, but a lot of the people who are mad about these changes, the way that the society has gone, they essentially throw around they blame everything on communism. But I don't think people are thinking about it very closely, because if you think about it, what is it that causes communism? I mean, is communism caused because you have an equitable society? Because people have health care? I mean, is communism a result of people having a decent
having a good quality of life?
Exactly. No. Communism comes from the opposite.
Communism comes from capitalism.
Yeah. Or even worse, it comes from what the kind of imperial czarism.
But that's what I'm saying. It comes from like the fist coming down.
Right, exactly.
Like, people get pressed into a box and then they go the exact opposite direction of that box.
Right, exactly.
And communism, the way communism acts right now, is the opposite of that stuff. But like, of course, as we know, it devolves.
But I don't think there's even there. I don't think we don't see any real communist movements right now at all.
No.
I think most people on the left who want.
But that's because that's another weird element that has been added to American history that we have to grapple with right now. Because a lot of times when regimes fall, it turns into communism. But in America, a lot of us have been like brainwashed into thinking communism is this horrible thing. So what the hell do we become if it topples? You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not going to head toward communism, but I'm hoping that's a good thing, actually, because I'm hoping that'll mean we'll try to structure the government into something that works better than communism or capitalism.
Right. Well, I mean, obviously there was periods of time, in the earlier parts of the 20th century, between 1930 and 1970, when I feel like everything was kind of progressing in a positive way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't turning into a communist utopia. America wasn't becoming, the Soviet Union.
It's what I always say. It's grassroots capitalism.
Yeah.
Grassroots capitalism is the ideal system, in my opinion. But the problem is it's almost impossible to maintain it, because at some point people get greedy and they start changing the rules.
Right.
Because what you really need is a system where business is limited. People can only have so many businesses. People can only make so much money. But there's still like, it's basically all evenly shared. Right. So everybody has everything they need.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, if you want to go for more, you can. But it's not necessary to maintain your life.
Right.
Like if you just want to like, I don't know, be a teacher your whole life, you know, or something simple, and just have that be your life. You can do that, you know. And the members of our society that can't work, you know, people who are disabled, people who are like, you know, who have other various troubles that make them unable to work, you know, they don't have to work.
Right.
You know, they are taken care of by the society.
Right.
You know, we take care of our most vulnerable members, because I feel like, you can really judge a society based on how they treat their most vulnerable members.
Right.
And if you see the most vulnerable members of society being treated like crap, you know there's something wrong with that society. Right. And that's why there's something wrong with our society. Yeah. I mean, look at what has happened to homelessness.
Yep.
Look at the mentally ill. Look at veterans. Like, the way people get treated in our country is horrendous.
Yeah, yeah, and getting worse, I would say.
Like, not to mention, like, you know, differently abled people, like, you know, just anybody in any situation where a lot of people fall through the cracks.
Sure.
You know, and I've been in special ed classes in public schools, and I feel like there are good people out there working with, you know, special ed individuals, you know, people with like autism or Down syndrome or whatever. Right. But like, there's still not enough push behind that. You know, there's still not enough money behind it. There's not enough support. Mm-hmm. There's not enough well-trained people to work with people who really need it.
Of course.
You know, and I don't know. It's just, anyway, I'm getting off on kind of a depressing tangent here. Yeah. But we were talking about Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, and I was actually going to say something that, you know, it was funny because another movie that I had rewatched recently that I really liked when it came out some years ago was The Descendants, directed by Alexander Payne. And The Descendants is essentially a story about these white guys who live in Hawaii and whose families, they're descendants of a white man who married a Hawaiian queen, basically. Yeah. And so their families inherited huge chunks of the Hawaiian Islands, which are now worth billions of dollars. And George Clooney plays one of these descendants, and he's essentially rich because of this connection to the Hawaiian royalty. And basically it was funny because watching the movie, the first time I saw the movie, I really enjoyed it. But watching it this time, especially after having just recently seen Killers of the Flower Moon, I found it a bit distasteful, the scenes when I was reminded that all these white guys, these kind of beach bums, you know, own these huge tracts of, you know,
like Hawaiian forest,
valuable Hawaiian land, exactly. And that the plot of the movie is basically what are they going to do with this? How are they going to sell it?
Yeah.
And it was bothersome to me because I just kind of felt like, and I felt this watching Killers of the Flower Moon as well, because in that movie Leonardo DiCaprio plays this guy who marries this Osage Indian woman who's wealthy. He has a lot of oil money, and so because he's married to her, he ends up coming into this money, and of course there's incentive in that case for, you know, the Indians to die off, you know,
yeah,
so that the white people.
So the little kingpin in that town is basically arranging to kill off all the Indians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I was watching The Descendants again, I was kind of, all that was coloring my viewing of The Descendants.
Yeah.
And kind of making the movie a little darker than I think it was really intended to be.
It's funny that we're mentioning this because I was thinking about, like, once again going back to this podcast I listened to by these guys called Super Mega. They had a joke where they were saying at the beginning of an episode that they had just bought a big tract of Hawaiian forest and they were going to turn it into a mini golf course or something.
Oh man!
But it was a joke.
Yeah,
like,
it's a joke.
Yeah, because they're super liberal guys. Like,
yeah.
They were just. But I'm just thinking of that. Like, The Descendants is a good movie. Killers of the Flower Moon is a good movie. That would definitely be a good double feature because of the overlapping themes.
Sure.
Because once again, we're just talking about, like, taking away from Native Americans what's rightfully theirs.
Right.
You know, and in the case of the Osage Indians, it's the oil they discovered.
Yeah.
And in the case of, like, you know, Hawaiians, it's Hawaii.
Yeah. Right.
That being said, you know, it's, I don't know what I was going to say there. I feel like there was it almost sounded like I was going to justify
Well, here's the thing that's weird about it, because what you were going to say may be related to what I'm about to say, which troubled me, because I was thinking about, in Killers of the Flower Moon, what is the message of this movie? And it almost seems, in retrospect, that the message of the movie is that don't marry somebody outside your own race, because they may want to steal your stuff. And that's a terrible message. And I don't think
the message is more like, watch out for enterprising white people.
Well, but even that, obviously, that's a scary message.
No, I know. I think the message is just, if you're somebody who's underrepresented and who's been largely repressed and discriminated, and you find yourself in a position where you have more power or more money than like the people who believe themselves that they should be the ones with power and money, you should be careful.
Yeah.
I think that's really the message, is just that human beings kind of by nature are scum. And if you're part of a group of people that are treated like garbage and you get something over on the people that are treating you like garbage, there's a chance they might resent you for that.
Yeah, and they might try to steal it in some subtle or not subtle way, and you should be very cautious. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to...
But I get what you're saying. It does kind of feel like... but it sucks. I hate to say this. I absolutely think we should be trying to, learn as much as we can about each other's cultures and, having, intermixing and having children and all that stuff. I 100% believe in that.
Yeah.
But because of the horrible world we live in, you are aware of the fact that there are challenges anytime, a lot, not always, but a lot of the time when mixed race couples pop up, there are challenges for them. And a lot of the time it's from their families. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm not saying everybody has racist families. I'm just saying everybody's culture is different. And if your culture is different enough from somebody else and you want to hitch your life to them, there might be pushback from your family. There might be pushback from people in general.
Of course.
I remember there's that Hannibal Buress has a joke about how he was dating a white woman and some old guy in a grocery store was giving him a weird look for it. You know what I mean? So it's it's still such a challenging thing in our society, as much as I don't want it to be. As much as I want everybody, who cares if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, gay, black, Latino, trans, upside, downside. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It doesn't matter. But it's I get why it's hard for that to I'm not saying I get why that's hard to I'm really trying hard not to say anything offensive here.
I know, of course.
So hard.
Just
because
spit it out, man.
Because I never want anyone to think that I'm a jerk or something.
Of course.
Anyway.
You want to be a decent person, so do I.
Yeah. I just mean, I think that societal pressure makes it harder for people to date outside of their own race.
Sure.
And as a result of different backgrounds, I think sometimes people don't end up in situations where they can meet people from different backgrounds just because they're around only their own people so much.
I think that's true.
You know what I mean? And a lot of that has been societally created on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to talk about societal systems of oppression, we're talking about how the black community has largely been oppressed into poverty and into the prison system. And the communities that they live in, that a lot of black people live in, it's very difficult to have a lot of cross between different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So you end up black people with black people, and then, the white people in different neighborhoods with white people. And it's it makes it very hard to get to know people, which is why I've always loved actually living in I don't want to say low income communities, but you know what I mean? Communities with a lot of different diverse people.
Right. Yeah, me too, obviously. But, and also when my wife and I we went overseas because we got a job with the military. And, when we were living we lived on a lot of military bases or near a lot of military bases. And it was very eye-opening for me because that was the first time in my life that I saw a lot of mixed race couples.
Yeah.
I would have...
Oh, that's another system of oppression, making a lot of, underrepresented people living in poverty feel like they have to join the military because it's their only route to a job or to college or something.
Absolutely. That's an unreasonable situation for society to put people in.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I will say that it was very nice to live in these areas, these places where we saw all these couples. Like there was a lot of, black and like we were in Korea for 3 years, and so there was a lot of black people married to Koreans. There was a lot of white people married to black people. A lot of, people of all different races were working there and mingling and mixing and falling in love and getting married. And we saw that in Korea. We saw it in Spain. We saw it in Turkey. And it was really good.
Exposure is really, really good for people.
Yeah.
And not like oh, you'll be exposed to the blacks or something. Like I just mean like, being around different kinds of people, I think is really, really helpful because of that. I grew up around a lot of military families, and a lot of my friends, like if not all of my friends growing up, were like black kids or like kids of other races than white.
Right.
And but then after that, when we moved back to America, I was heavily bullied in predominantly non-white schools.
Yeah.
So if I hadn't had that experience of having like these friendships with a lot of different kinds of kids growing up, and knowing that there was like, that all people of all races were like, good and bad, like who knows what beliefs I could have developed as a result of being heavily bullied that way when I went through school.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was worried about you, in that situation. Like we tried to obviously, help you as much as we could, but there's a limit. But
that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, the movie American History X?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know how Edward Norton, he's like a brainwashed racist, and then he goes to prison and finds out that the racists there are like bastards, and he makes like a black friend in prison and realizes that like, oh, maybe not all black people suck.
Right.
Like he has a more complex worldview.
Yeah.
Everybody needs an experience like that when they're young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They need to be around as many different kinds of people as possible so that they are aware that there really is no difference between any kind of people. People are all just people.
Yeah. And
a lot of people grow up so isolated and in such like homogenous communities that they never get that exposure. And I don't just mean like, I mean, it definitely happens a lot with white people, but like it happens with like anybody who's only around their own culture their whole life.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I had a similar experience to you because I growing up in the city in California, and when I went to school from the earliest age, I was around kids of different races, and it just never occurred to me to really think in racial ways.
Yeah, to like have any kind of defining lines.
Yeah, I mean, my mother was poor. We were poor. We had poor people around us, and also a lot of wealthy people because we were in Southern California. So you got to see both sides, and it never occurred to me, that there was that many differences between people other than just the superficial.
Yeah. The kids also by nature just don't discriminate, so we shouldn't be teaching any of them discrimination.
Right. I mean, the problems I had with other kids were whether they were obnoxious or they were bullies or they were, evil in some way, but that had nothing to do with race. I mean, like some of the kids I had the biggest problem with were white kids.
And in all honesty, like some of the worst people I knew growing up were white kids.
Yeah.
Like it's still it's so funny to me because like even though I was bullied a lot by like kids of other races when I was younger, a lot of what they did was never as bad as what some of like the suburban white kids I knew did to me growing up.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So like I feel like that's still
here.
an argument against raising people in a certain kind of way. You know what I mean? And I think these white kids that grow up in like upper crust homogenous suburban communities, not all of them, but I think some of them grow up like with worldviews that are kind of skewed in the negative.
Yeah, well, I think so too. And which is not to put down white kids. I mean, I also had friends who were white. I'm white. I don't think white people are inherently evil.
Well, it's also not to lift anybody else up above anybody else.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
The fact is, I think we're all on the same playing field.
Yeah, human beings suck in general.
Human beings are terrible.
Right.
No, but I mean, like, I think we just have to care about all people.
Yes.
And as it stands right now, the people that have been oppressed and tormented the most in recent history are like, people that aren't white in our country and kind of in the world. So like, we need to be fighting for those people because those people are the same as us and they don't deserve worse treatment because they're not white.
Right.
That's basically all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Let's just keep patting ourselves on the back.
I know.
This is the Max and Walter Are Not Racist podcast.
We are good.
We're
good
not
people.
We're not racist.
We're the heroes.
I promise. I'm only racist against Irish people and Russians. And are those aren't even technically racist. That's more like xenophobic.
Yeah.
I'm only xenophobic against other kinds of white people.
That's right.
I'm just kidding.
Beware of the Lithuanians.
Yes, exactly. No, but I mean, that actually brings it to another interesting point, which is like when I was overseas, and I know I mentioned the Peace Corps a lot. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I just, I was there for 2 years, so I feel like it's something to draw on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in Kyrgyzstan, you want to talk about like racial homogeny, right? Like in Kyrgyzstan, a lot of Kyrgyz people have lived in a very small country their entire lives and not been exposed to anything else. Mm-hmm. So as a result, they have certain views about other people based on just a lack of education. Uh-huh. And, that doesn't mean they're bad people or that they're racist. It just means that they've only lived in that community their whole lives, so they don't have any other exposure. Yeah. And I felt like that was part of what we were doing in the Peace Corps, is like just kind of going there and talking about what our lives were like in America, and like, giving them more ideas about what the world is, expanding their worldview so that they could like then, travel if they wanted to, or, help their own country based on the knowledge that they gain about the surrounding world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I visited you there, I had a wonderful time. I enjoyed the cultural, experience.
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan is cool.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful country.
It's very mountainous.
I still want to write a song in Kyrgyz and try to make it go viral.
I think you should.
in Central Asia.
Yeah.
I'd probably have to write it in Russian though.
Yeah, maybe.
Because Kyrgyzstan is, in case people don't know, a post-Soviet country, so a lot of people speak Russian there.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough of my yakking. I also recently finished the second season of Severance.
Oh, okay.
To jump off of that. And I gotta say, I don't feel that the second season for me was as successful as the first season.
Okay.
Because the first season felt like a really intense thriller that ended on a really high note. And this season kind of felt like it was sort of just trying to stretch out the original idea without really adding anything new to it.
Okay.
And then it sort of ended in kind of like it didn't really reveal anything exciting in the ending. It just sort of, I guess it depends on what you consider exciting.
Right.
Because like from a social standpoint, from like a human relationship standpoint, it was exciting, I guess.
Yeah.
But from like I'm curious about the mystery of the show.
Yeah.
Not really. It didn't really reveal much. It was just sort of, but I've also heard people talking about recently how like sometimes shows will just like explain things for a really long time now, because there's a lot of people who are like media illiterate now.
Oh, okay.
So they need like a lot more like, what's that called? Like
exposition.
Yeah, they need more exposition in order to like make things work in their head.
Yeah.
Which makes me kind of sad, because I feel like then that means like movies and TV are dying.
Yeah.
But all in all, I was a little bit disappointed by Severance. I'll still probably try to watch the third season.
Yeah.
But I know you haven't seen it, so there's not really a whole ton we can talk about.
Yeah, well, we've talked about this, but I have a hard time after watching a couple of seasons of most shows, because I just sort of start to feel like it's just spinning wheels after a certain point. Like,
yeah.
I like closure. I like things that have an arc, a story arc, and then a satisfying ending.
Yeah.
And
no, me too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
No, of course.
I don't love things that drag on forever, and that's my concern with Severance. I'm worried that they're just going to try to stretch the idea so thin. It'll be like butter scraped over too much bread. Lord of the Rings reference, if you don't know. Yes. But I'm just worried it'll get thin. Yeah, and like shows like Lost, where it just like goes meandering into nothing, and then they just slap on a quick conclusion at the end because they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just.
Well, I've actually been disappointed a couple of times recently with shows that I had hopes for. Not to say that I was disappointed with Severance. I enjoyed the parts of it that I watched.
Yeah, the first season is like one of the best first seasons of television I've ever seen.
I agree. It was excellent.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. But I was trying to watch that Marvel show, Born Again, the Daredevil show.
The Daredevil show, yeah.
And I right from the start, even watching the previews of it, I had a bad feeling, because Born Again is the title of a series of Daredevil comics that were compiled into a graphic novel. And it was drawn by this artist, Frank Miller, and came out back in the 90s or something. And it was a fantastic story. Born Again series is one of my favorite comic stories. And in fact, I own it. We have it here. And I was really looking for, when I heard that they were making that, I was very excited, because it's a great story. But apparently it's not related to the comic, except by title. The title is the only thing they've held on to.
So it wasn't a She-Hulk?
No. And I know you're saying She-Hulk I actually enjoyed.
I think that's how we should rate things, on a scale of She-Hulk to, something else.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish it was as good as She-Hulk. I just feel like it's a very kind of, I don't know, dreary crime story where the kingpin is sort of takes over the city, and I just feel like it's nothing we haven't seen before, and it wasn't interesting to me at all. And I mean, I don't know how well it's doing or not.
Yeah.
But I probably won't continue watching it. And it's too bad because I think that the original one, the comic, the graphic novel,
is good.
Born Again is so good and really.
Well, after seeing Man-Thing in Werewolf by Night,
yeah,
we know that they can do interesting things with those kind of stories.
Absolutely, and I just think that the Born Again graphic novel, the villain is the Kingpin, but there's another villain, this guy Nuke. Who has like an American flag on his face, tattooed to his face.
Which my dad attempted to paint on his face.
Yeah.
And now we have,
I did.
I have some photos of that. I'll put them up here.
Nice. And I just really wanted to see them do that because this Nuke character is kind of the antithesis of Captain America. He's the negative.
He's nega Captain America.
Yeah.
I've got to be careful how I say that. Don't want that to sound like something else.
Right. Anyway, climactically, he and Captain America have a fight. And I was actually kind of thinking how great it would be if they could get who's the guy who plays Captain America in the Avengers movies?
Chris Evans.
Yeah, Chris Evans. If they can actually get him to come back for this climax
to fight Nuke.
This Nuke guy would have been so amazing. I was really hoping for that.
Yeah, but they're never going to make anything that is actually good.
No.
I mean, well, or very rarely.
Yeah.
They just pump out whatever they can as quick as they can.
Yeah, and it's just a shame though because I really like the guy they have playing Daredevil.
Yeah.
I think he's really good.
I like the guy playing Punisher in the show too.
Yeah, the guy who played. In fact, all the casting of the show is good. There's no problem with the casting.
It's just the writing.
It's just the writing, and I think it's a shame.
Yeah, whoever the writer is of that show, we're coming for you.
Yeah, and again, I'm not blaming the writer either. They're probably writing what they're being asked to write.
Yeah.
And
I know. It's the whole system is messed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess that's where we stand on Severance and White Lotus. Not White Lotus, sorry. That brings me to the other show I've been watching.
Yeah, there you go. Let's talk
White
about
Lotus.
White Lotus.
A show that I found so stressful in the first season I almost couldn't finish it, but has become less stressful as the show goes on, which in a weird way is almost like ironic because it's like as the characters become less engaging, the show becomes less stressful and ironically more watchable for me.
That's funny.
But because I know that I've heard a lot of people say the first season was their favorite season, but I found it enormously stressful.
It is stressful, but I enjoyed it.
But I've been enjoying it. I've been in the new season. I've been particularly wrapped up of the mystery. There's the British actor that plays Lucius Malfoy, Draco's dad.
Yeah.
He's in the show and he's playing like an American from North Carolina.
Wow.
And he's playing like a businessman, like a Wall Street businessman
Okay.
who has just been caught up in some sort of scheme and informed over the phone while he's on vacation in Thailand that when he comes back to the States he's basically going to get arrested and lose everything. So he's having like a friggin' breakdown and he's like plotting, possibly trying to like kill himself and his wife. So I want to see how that resolves.
Sure.
But there's a lot of other little plots that are interesting as well. At this point I've committed enough to the show that I'll keep watching it. I did notice something weird about it though, which is that, and I don't know if this has already been heavily discussed, maybe I'm just late to the game on this one, but the first season has 6 episodes, I think. The second one has 7 and this one has 8.
Huh.
So it's like they're going up 1 episode every season.
That's funny.
And I don't really know why.
Yeah.
I don't know if like Mike White has some kind of plan or something. I don't really. It's hard to say with him.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, when I initially watched the show, I had not heard anything about it, except I saw that it was created by Mike White.
Yeah.
And that immediately made me want to see it because I'm a fan of some of his work.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Mike White loves sex in his work. I'll tell you that.
That makes him a normal person, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, who doesn't?
No, I know. I just think some other directors aren't as sex heavy as far as their themes go.
That's true.
I mean, he's really interested in like human drama and drama around like sexuality.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Christ, look at Chuck and Buck.
Yeah,
Chuck and Buck is all about sexual drama.
Yeah,
and like White Lotus is so sex drama based.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, from the first season with like the weird, crazy rich husband and the gay resort manager who's like trying to get his male employees to bone him in his office,
Right.
and then like in the second season with like the prostitutes, and the third season now with like the weird incest vibes going on. Like there's just a lot of he likes sex as a subject that everything else kind of orbits around.
Right. No, it's true. It's true. I mean, it's funny because I was actually, I was thinking about School of Rock, and I'm glad that they didn't work any sexual subplots.
No, me too. Although now that you mention that, I'm thinking of the joke from 40-Year-Old Virgin again. In the 40-Year-Old Virgin, Paul Rudd has like a box of porn that he's given his dude Carell,
right?
And he's like, you've heard of School of Rock yet, right? And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, this is. Right. So that's all I can think about. School of Rock is a great movie, though.
Yeah, it is. I love that.
Did Mike White produce that movie?
I don't know that he produced it. I think he made.
Or was he involved in the writing or the directing?
I mean, usually when he's in something, he's got some other role.
Yeah, because he's more of like a behind-the-scenes guy.
Yeah. I'm really not sure, actually, to be honest with you.
Because he does play Sarah Silverman's like boyfriend in that movie.
Yeah.
Or I should say she plays his girlfriend, but whatever.
Mr. Schneebly.
Mr. Schneebly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you, that's School of Rock is a great movie.
It is. It's
absolutely.
Really great.
That's like Blackjack's best performance in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's his best movie.
And which is not to say I like dislike other stuff Jack Black has been in. I like a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of good stuff, but I think that is the best tailored to his weird persona.
But I think he's aware of that. I think he's very proud of that movie too.
Yeah, as he should.
And he feels like, he would love to do anything like that again. I mean, like any kind of like really good quality auteur movie that's like tailored to him specifically. I mean, come on.
I'm actually quite surprised. Since I've never thought of this, but they could do a series of movies or a show.
A show would
Jack
probably
Black.
work the best.
Yeah, of his character.
They could totally do a School of Rock TV show.
Yeah.
And now that we said it, I feel like we're going to see it. Like we're going to be like next month on Disney Plus, School of Rock, the television series.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to be like, that was ours. We should like timestamp the podcast and like bring it into court and be like, we thought of it first.
It was ours.
Somebody, some producer in Hollywood is listening to our dumb little podcast,
right?
And stealing our ideas.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time, so.
No, I'm sure. Honestly, I kind of feel like the job of a lot of producers in Hollywood is really to just like pan for gold through the internet.
Sure.
Just look for like stuff that's not already highly popular and steal ideas from it.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that's true.
So that could happen, but like, I don't know. At this point, I've learned already so much about how like so much of art is so incestuous, especially in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
That I'm not really bothered by it at this point. Like if somebody steals jokes of mine, somebody steals ideas of mine, it sucks, and I would rather they didn't, and I would like to be compensated if they're going to take my ideas, but if it happens and I can't control it and there's like literally nothing I can do about it, what the heck, why am I going to kill myself having an anxiety attack over it?
Well, here's when it really bothers me. If I put something out there and it happens, but it's done poorly and it fails, that annoys me. Like let me tell you, a few years ago,
Are you going to talk about Hannah again?
No,
because I know you feel like your book. Wait, what's your book? The book called?
Mad Skills.
Mad Skills. I know you feel like your book Mad Skills was ripped off by the people that made Hannah.
Yeah. I mean, let me just say that it may have. I don't know.
Yeah, Hannah, and also I have a theory that the Dead Space video game series was taken from your zombie series because that book came out just before that video game series came out. It could be a coincidence.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't want to point fingers at anybody. It's just a theory.
Yeah.
So if you like Dead Space or Hannah, you should go and look for my Walter Greatshell's Mad Skills and Zombies spelled with an X on Amazon. Buy those books and read them because they will be your thing. Zombies, the first Zombies book, hands down, one of the best science fiction novels I've ever read. Oh. And if you're like somebody who's like upset with the government right now, even better. Like a great thing to read.
Well, I mean, those, yes, have been concerns of mine. But the one that I was going to mention, though, was a book that I didn't write, which is Watership Down.
Yeah.
Which I've always been a huge fan of Watership Down.
Are you going to talk about that terrible CGI adaptation?
Yeah, because for years I said somebody should do a really good CGI adaptation of Watership Down. And one was finally done, but it wasn't good.
Yeah.
It wasn't well done. I mean, the artwork was poor. The CGI was not good, and so
the animated movie is good though. Like the 2D
cartoon,
animated, the cartoon one.
The cartoon from the 70s or 80s.
Yeah,
that's not bad. But the CGI one that they did as a miniseries was not a good one. And I always am disappointed by that, because if somebody did take the idea from anything I said or wrote, I feel bad, because that was not what I was suggesting.
Yeah.
Don't do it poorly.
No, you were suggesting...
Do it very well.
I don't think anyone is ever suggesting someone should do it poorly.
No.
But we also talk about the fact that, like, there's a lot of properties that have been mismanaged that could be done better.
Yes.
There's also, like, good ideas that were turned into bad projects that could be redone as good projects.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, in fact, my wife, your mother.
My wife?
Yeah.
Sorry for the ancient Borat reference. I'm a millennial,
that
so
works.
I'm a slave
works
to.
For me.
I'm a slave to my millennial references.
I'll go for the Borat reference. No, but she was talking about Logan's Run, and I was because she had just seen it, and I was like saying, well, that's a movie. It's a good movie.
It's ripe for being redone.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. Oh, there's some. So, hello there, Wesley.
It's just yawning.
Wesley's sad,
just yawning
sad
pups.
dog yawning.
Yeah, we have the pups trapped behind the fence in the kitchen again, so they won't bark and bonk on the table.
Yeah. Anyway, and I was thinking, Logan's Run is a prime example of a movie that could be really well made, because the effects were so primitive for that movie, and you could do that really, really well.
Yeah. But I mean, you got to be careful what you wish for, because, like, I remember they did a remake of Total Recall.
Yes.
And it was really bad.
Yeah.
And like, you could argue, I personally, I think the original Total Recall is kind of a fun movie, but the effects in it are pretty cheesy and rudimentary.
But I think they work.
They absolutely work.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's not a terrible idea of a property that could be remade well.
Sure.
But it was not remade well.
No.
It was remade so poorly.
But I think that's a case where you want to maybe not remake things. Like, obviously, Total Recall was made by Paul Verhoeven, one of the great science fiction directors. And if you're going to remake something by a great director like that, whether it be Total Recall or RoboCop.
Which also was not a good
also
remake.
Not really remade.
Although it had some good moments.
It did, but
I would argue that the remake of RoboCop is better than the remake of Total Recall.
Yes, I would agree with that, but still not necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that.
Well, that's something that scares me, because I've heard somebody talking about how they're going to try to remake Starship Troopers again.
Yeah. See, again, why? There's it's Paul Verhoeven, You
have talked about wanting to include the power armor in the movie.
And I would like that. Like, if you were to do Starship Troopers so that you were really doing one that was faithful to the novel.
Yeah, not to the satirical idea of the movie.
Exactly, because the book by Robert Heinlein is not satirical. It's not a satirical novel.
No, it's just like a pro-military novel.
It's a very pro-military thing. So if you were to do one that was very faithful to the novel, I'd actually be on board with that, because I've always wanted to see that. The trouble with it is that, in a weird way, I think many years ago Marvel scooped it. With Iron Man, and because when that was written, there was no Iron Man, and so the idea of having powered armor was a very interesting and exciting idea. And
also it's been done so many times.
Exactly, it's everywhere.
I mean, like, you could argue even something like Warhammer 40K is all about power armor.
Absolutely.
Like, and I'm thinking, like, even Avatar is kind of that idea too.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way.
It is. And so you're never going to be able to have that idea be fresh the way it was when the book came out.
Fresh, delicious, and juicy.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, stop being so upset.
I know.
You'll be let out of there soon.
Poor dog.
We're not torturing the dogs, I promise. They just get sad.
They're just begging because they want our attention, and we will give it to them the minute we're off here.
But you got to be careful remaking good properties.
Yeah,
I mean, because I was just rewatching a couple Wes Anderson movies recently, because I rewatched The Royal Tenenbaums and Moonrise Kingdom.
Oh, nice.
And I would definitely never ask anybody to remake any Wes Anderson movies.
Yeah,
because they're so specific to his style that I feel like you would just mess it up.
Yeah, he's fortunate that way, in that his specific creativity, you cannot copy it. You
Yeah.
can't remake it unless you were going to make it completely different. And then
But
it
that's
wouldn't
what's
be
so
his
great
thing.
about pure auteurism.
Yeah.
Is that like somebody who's really got such a specific style, it's very hard to like screw with that.
Yeah.
Although if AI gets complex enough, theoretically it could make whole new Wes Anderson movies.
Yeah, right. And that would be interesting in its own way, but yeah.
I think Gwen left the dishwasher on.
I see something steaming in there.
Yeah, I think Gwen, while we're doing our podcast, left the dishwasher on so that it would occasionally make noise and distract me because I feel like maybe I turned the gain up too much. And no, it's just the dishwasher in the background.
She's sabotaging you.
I know. I have to find a way out. This marriage was a mistake from the beginning. What have I done? No, Gwen is absolutely the best thing to ever happen to me in my life.
Gwen
And
is
if
delightful.
you're out there and you've had trouble finding love, keep holding out hope, because it took me until I was like almost 33 to meet somebody who was really right for me. So I just, you just got to keep on trucking, keep trying to work on yourself, keep trying to go places where, you'll meet people with like interests to you, and eventually, who knows, maybe love will just fall into your lap.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a magical thing. You never know when something's going to happen like that. I think it was when you were literally least expecting.
Yeah. Well, it was when I had kind of decided that like, oh, I'm not going to date for a while anymore. I mean, I'm just going to like have fun.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go out there and just like, meet cool people and like, date a little bit and just have like a good time. And then suddenly, boop.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get married again.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because I remember that your mother and I were telling you, when you were in the depths of despair, we were saying, just keep doing what you're doing, because with us, and when we had given up on relationships, given up on love, that's when we met each other. So that's going to happen to you too. But I kind of feel like we were lying to you just to keep you from getting depressed,
Just to keep me from killing myself.
Yeah, But it turned out to be true, which is fantastic.
No, it's absolutely true. I think it's a matter of like coincidence and circumstance, and also just being willing to put yourself out there. I don't think I ever really gave up hope that like I would meet somebody who at least would work well enough for me. I don't think I thought it was going to happen the way it did. I didn't think I was like, full blown real love, like pure love, someone who was perfect for me was just going to friggin' fall out of the sky on me. But I thought like eventually I'll meet somebody who I can stand and I'll shack up with them, like, but it worked out way better than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of feel like that's what a lot of like people in middle age and older will say. A lot of times it's like anything, that's kind of true about everything.
Yeah.
It's sort of like everything, the thing you want to happen doesn't happen until you've given up on it happening.
It does seem to be that way.
Like, falling in love, a major breakthrough in your career, a major, you know what I mean? Like any big transition in your life doesn't really happen until you've given up on that transition happening. And I wouldn't be surprised if your experience as a writer wasn't similar.
Well, I wouldn't either. But with the thing with doing any kind of art is that there's always the possibility that could happen after you're dead, which I'd be fine. Like if you could benefit from my work suddenly becoming popular after I'm dead, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'd be cool with that.
But I think it to some extent it also has to come from you. I mean, because I'm not one of those like the secret people that believes like if you manifest something it'll come true.
Right.
It's not like you can just sit around all day and wait and eventually things will fall into your lap. You have to take an active role in your life.
Right.
And when you take an active role and you pursue the things that are important to you, that's usually when you'll run across things that seem like miracles, but in reality are just like, positive coincidences tied to you trying to move in the directions that are important to you.
Absolutely.
So like I met my fiance because I was doing a lot more stand-up. I was going out and trying to like, be in the world more and do more of the things that I was interested in. So obviously the kind of people that are going to go to like, amateur comedy are going to be people that are into like weird stuff.
Yep.
And that are like, maybe artsy, maybe like into media, And so as a result, I met somebody into weird stuff who gelled with me at this weird event. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whereas years of online dating, I never met anyone who I was really compatible with.
Right.
But then, like, when I start doing stuff that matters to me and I'm out with people who also are into the same things as me, suddenly I meet the love of my life.
Yeah, yeah, and and it's funny because that's kind of exactly how I met your mother too. I mean,
shout out to How I Met Your Mother, the TV show. I'm just kidding. I've never seen that show.
I've never seen the show either. But yeah, I mean, I had moved out here, and I just for my own entertainment was going to a lot of art films.
Yeah.
Because there's this nice little art cinema here.
The Avon.
The Avon, and I was going there, and one night I went to see the Swedish double feature. And there happened to be this, in the intermission between the two movies, there was this, beautiful woman standing in the back of the theater, waiting for the next show to start. And I saw her there, and I was not accustomed to talking to strange women. I mean, I never did. But this time I was like, if I don't talk to this woman, I'm going to kick myself forever because I got to try. So I went over and we just started up a conversation talking about Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah.
Because those are the movies we were watching, 2 Ingmar Bergman films.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah, and when the lights flashed saying it was time to sit down, I said, "Would you care to sit with me?" And she did, and that was the beginning of the whole thing, which has led to you existing. That
was friggin' love.
It was love, and but it was because two people. I mean, what kind of people are going to go to a Swedish double feature by themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously had something important.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't attribute that kind of thing to luck. You have to attribute it to, you put yourself in the right place at the right time.
Right.
And, apparently I did the same thing too by accident. But it is what it is. It's not really accident. It's not really miracle. It's just the nature of, coincidence and the ability of the human mind to guide you in the right direction if you follow what really sparks joy for you.
Right.
But that being said, we're now at the end of this podcast that has bridged that has gone all the way from global politics and slavery to movies and love and TV. Right. So this is the love episode, the great way to start off the new season.
Yeah.
So nice. let me try to. I'm going to try to turn on auto tune here and see if I can sing a little love song.
Love song.
Let's see. No, that's not it. Maybe I can't do this. Do I have faith? Oh, there it is. I found it.
Nice.
Oh God, wait a minute. I don't think I can even do this because I can't select limit to key while we're recording here.
Oh no.
I don't know. Well, let me try sing a love song anyway. Love is a many-colored, resplendent flower that flies through the air and occasionally lands on the faces of God's children. Yeah.
Woo!
All right. Thank you for listening.
That was beautiful.